Okay.
And for this room, where are the mics?
That's a good question. They must be above us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can everyone hear us online?
I can hear you fine.
Okay, great. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining the June Housing Commission meeting. Also happy Pride Month. We are going to start with public comment. You said we had no public comment. People signed up. Do we have anyone on the line who would like to speak for a public comment? Who did not previously sign up? Okay, hearing none, we go ahead to approval of notes. I don't think we have a printout of
We
that.
do not have a printout of the notes.
They were very long. I read them. I make a motion to approve them.
Second.
Okay, any discussion or any edits or anything for the minutes before? Okay. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And it passes. Thank you. So the next item on our agenda is the ARPA.
So we're gonna actually switch to ARBA and Crystal Towers 3 in order so that the Crystal Towers team can walk over to the Planning Commission after this.
Right, because they have to, yep, okay. Sounds, well, next item on the agenda is Crystal Towers 3.
Okay, so I can start us off. So I have a quick handout that I'll go over and then I'll pass it over to the applicant team. So 1 second, pull that up. Okay, so Crystal Towers 3, it's a site plan. It's located at 1600 South Eade Street in Crystal City. So the applicant is proposing to construct a new residential building and a new retail building. The proposed residential building is up to 10 stories, containing 209 units, and the retail building would be 1 story and have about 28,000 square feet of retail. So this site plan, you'll note the affordable housing program is similar to the last site plan we heard in Crystal City. The applicant has committed to meet the base affordable housing requirements. Additionally, the applicant will be contributing $1.4 million to the AHIF, Affordable Housing Investment Fund, to earn additional density. And so this is for many of the same reasons as you heard 2 months ago with the Americana Hotel site plan, but the main reasons for accepting cash instead of on-site units here, and you will hear a site plan after this with on-site units, but the main reason here is for the leveraging. So cash contributions do leverage more affordable units off-site and for longer affordability periods than on-site caps, and this is especially the case for projects located in areas where the rent differential between market and affordable rents are especially high. So for this project, the county will be able to provide the gap financing for about 18 units at the Crystal Houses infill development project, which the county has already made a commitment to and entered into an agreement with a development team for. So that $1.4 million basically would be leveraged into 18 units at Crystal Houses, whereas the county would only be receiving probably 5 or 6 units through the site plan process. And then again, you know, those units at Crystal House will be affordable for 99 years as opposed to the standard 30-year term that's received through site plans. And then in conjunction with that policy consideration is the budget. The county has made some significant and recent financial commitments, being the Barcroft Apartments, where the county opened a $150 million line of credit to help acquire and keep that affordable for 99 years. And then the $53 million anticipated ask for the gap financing for Crystal House. So both of those are big policy considerations. There is one for this site plan that does differ from Americana Hotel. So in talking with housing staff, compliance notes that where the contribution is usually around six or less CAFs, it really doesn't benefit from economies of scale in terms of administration and monitoring. So this applies to the time required per unit for both ownership and management and county staff. So really for all involved. So,
Alex, do you know if we have the assisted listening?
we do, but I don't think it's gonna work in the screen. And I'm not sure if it will.
Hi Doris, welcome.
Doors. It's not one of the rooms.
Telling me.
It's not. Do you know if it has it or not?
History.
But so staff recommendation is they support the base affordable housing ordinance as well as the $1.4 million cash contribution to earn additional density. So I can turn it over to you all now. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Robert Vaughn. I'm with Duet Properties. I'm joined by Jim Yance from BKT Architects and Nick Cummings from Walsh Bellucci. We're here to talk about our application for Crystal Towers 3. The application covers the portion of the existing Crystal Towers property that runs on E Street. And this is on the block bounded by Eads, 15, South Ferns, and 18th Street. And just for orientation, the Crystal Houses site is located just one block to the south. The application proposes to redevelop 2 existing surface parking lots, one with an 11-story mixed-use building containing 209 units and 8,000 square feet ground floor retail, and a single-story retail building containing over 19,000 square feet. Here you can see the ground floor plan. The mixed-use residential building is located on an existing surface parking lot just north of Crystal Flats, with 8,000 square feet of retail fronting on each street. And then moving up to the north, closer to the intersection of 15th and Eads, is the single-story retail building that contains just over 19,000 square feet. Here you can see an existing site aerial. The locations of the 2 proposed buildings is generally outlined in red. And then here's the proposed aerial rendering. You can see the 11-story mixed-use multifamily building just north of Crystal Flats, the existing driveway going up to Crystal Towers. Is essentially in the same location, but is fully renovated with wider sidewalks and expanded plantings. And then the 19,000 square foot retail edging up towards 15th and Eads. One of the things that we tried to do was use extensive green roofs where we possibly could to both improve the aesthetics and also to improve the stormwater capacity of the project. And here you can see the proposed architecture. The ground floor is very transparent, kind of bring that activation out onto each street. And then the residential. So that's the extent of our application, but happy to answer any questions.
No more presentations? Okay. I think on this one, the same concern that we had raised 2 months ago about the cash contribution instead of on-site units. Again, I feel like it's a case the county has made a commitment to a different site, didn't fund it, and then they're using projects like this where we could get additional units to fund units we've already sort of promised but didn't fund, which I think is a bad deal for the county overall. I understand why staff is proposing this, and it makes sense from a, we're looking for money to do the things that the county's already committed to, but I see this as, we could have gotten 5 to 6 more units on site at this property, and the additional Crystal Houses units that were already sort of agreed to, and instead we're just going to get what's already been agreed to. So I don't see that as the best deal for increasing our affordable housing supply. But yeah.
Yeah, I hear that concern. I did not mention one point in my presentation, which I do want to make, and that is that housing is getting about 1.4 out of the about $2.4 million overall package here. So affordable housing is getting over 50% of that earned density package. There's some transportation improvements and I believe a public space contribution or funding towards that as well. But housing is earning most of the, or getting the benefit of most of the earned density on this site.
That's a 1.4 million you said?
Out of about 2.4.
Okay, so there's additional sums of money not referenced in here. Okay.
Yeah, that are going towards other community benefits, but non-housing related.
Go ahead, Paul.
Alex, was the base contribution, that's always on-site units optional, right? It can always be just cash, right?
Correct. So
Or is it always cash?
in the past, we have seen that applicants choose to do cash instead of on-site units. And that's a pretty well-known trend. So that is somewhat what we expect. But the decision does not have to be made now. It just has to be made before the first certificate of occupancy. So it's a decision that is made multiple years down the line.
But it's entirely within the control of the developer.
Yeah, it's 100% the applicant's option.
So I would join or sort of add my voice to what Kellen said. And I'm going to vote against this because for that reason, I think it's a beautiful project that it would be great if some low-income folks would get to take advantage of that beautiful building. We know that Crystal houses, the one is to the south, I can't remember the numbers, but that's going to be a beautiful building as well. Apple's going to do a great job, we know that. But I feel like the loss of net overall affordable units is something to protest, and this is a protest vote, no doubt about it. And also, as I've been thinking about this in the Americana site, I feel like county sort of got a pig in a poke with the Crystal Houses deal. They took on the obligation to deliver these affordable units without a source to pay for them, which naturally created an opportunity for developers naturally to offload their affordable units there. And so you could, there's Crystal City and there's Crystal City. I think the northern part of Crystal City is not going to have any new affordable units in it because they're all going to end up in the old Crystal Houses site. And I think that's regrettable. So I think, it's sort of, it may not have been the best deal, but it's what we have. We're going to have a lot of affordable units in that neighborhood where there weren't before. So that's all for the good. So this is the ultimate in sort of shaking my fist. But I think the project is great. I know y'all will get approved, and I think, God bless you. I think it's going to be great.
Totally appreciate and understand all the comments. I just wanted, for one quick clarifying note, the Crystal Houses project will have, multiple buildings. I think the first one likely to be constructed is almost directly across the street.
Right.
So just for a geographic location.
I think that's important. I mean, this project is literally right across the street from that. So I was more thinking about the Americana site and up sort of northern where the Amazon headquarters is and all around there. And it seems like there was almost an intent to put all the affordable housing down at the south end. I don't know if that's the case, but a Senate could see it that way. So.
Yeah, I have a question. Well, I don't really know the procedure, so apologies if this is my first meeting, but I read through this and I have questions about what happens to the money. So the 1.4 million, right? Based on what I'm hearing, this would be kind of to offset a previous deal where the county needs money to for affordable housing units. How would that be dispersed? how would that money be utilized?
So, so for this, this project and one we heard in April, so yes, the county has entered into an agreement with a development team, at a site that's very close to this one, to produce a significant amount of affordable units, over 655 affordable units at this Crystal Houses site. And they will be asking the county for around $53 million to bring those 655 units forward and complete them. And as Kellen mentioned earlier, there isn't $53 million in the AHIF budget right now. Well, I'm not actually sure about the exact numbers, but in the latest FY24 approval, there was not that much money. And so staff is proposing to help meet that $53 million obligation to use funds from the development teams, but specifically the ones in the same area, so Crystal City, so that it will be delivering units in the same area. So yeah, did that fully answer your question? Basically, there's a big cost that hasn't been paid yet, but will need to be paid, and this money will help offset it.
In that first sentence where like the meeting the base affordable housing requirements, again, from what I'm gathering in terms of the context of the conversation, there is the developers have a choice of either building affordable units or providing the cost, I guess, like the 819,000. And so the developers are choosing to put the 800,000 instead of incorporating affordable housing into those buildings.
Yeah, so yeah, these are like really good questions, and we actually recently had a presentation on the base ordinance, and next month we're actually going to have a presentation on the bonus. And so it is sort of two separate things. They're two different calculations, and the base ordinance really is a calculation. It's in the zoning ordinance. It says, based on however many square feet, this is above the base, this is how much you're going to have to pay. And so that's what it is for this project. So the base will be $820,000 likely, or those few units, plus the 1.4. So with the base plus the bonus, it does go over 2 million, 2.2 million.
And right now in that area, are there people living in those buildings? Like, I'm familiar with the Crystal City area, but I can't obviously have a map in my head.
In which buildings?
So in that area that you're trying to develop, right?
So the Crystal Houses. So Crystal Houses it's a bit of a interesting site. There are Crystal Houses 1 and 2, which currently have people staying in them, but for what we're talking about, it's an infill opportunity. So they're building up buildings around that. So there's no current residents at this building for the funding that we.
Well, essentially nobody would be displaced if.
No, it's a parking lot.
Yeah.
It's
There
okay.
will be no displacement.
Okay.
It's a lot like the project that we're doing, because they are developing the parking lot surrounding the existing 1960s buildings.
Yeah.
Alex, question. So I noticed in the memo, we didn't have anything about the accessible units.
So,
That's my question.
yes, so there are not, obviously there are no on-site units, so there are 0 type A CAFs. The applicant has 2%, which is either 6 or 7 units, I think 6.
5.
5,
2%,
okay.
209.
Okay, so, yeah, 2% of 209 is 5 market rate type A accessible. And another question that was asked, that wasn't in the handout, but asked last time, was about basically history of the developer, and they have not submitted a site plan in the last 10 years.
Okay. And is that something that moving forward we could get in the memo, even when they're not capped, just market rate units, just the information about the
Yes.
accessible units? And I know we had a separate discussion when we were talking about the draft equity framework about other data that gets presented to the county board, which has a very long report, but if there's a way if we have data on other sort of protected groups that are impacted by particular site plan projects, that we could add those, that would be helpful. But happy to have more of a conversation about what that could look like, and because, we don't want this to start looking like the board report, because it's just a lot more to have to digest, but there's a way to do that in a way that's concise.
Yeah, so in the board report that was sent out earlier this morning, on page 31 of the draft board report, there is an equity principles section. I don't think it necessarily gets to what you're speaking at. It kind of mostly covers what we've already covered here today. But yeah, obviously, would like to keep those talks going and figuring out how we can provide that better.
Sounds good. Laura, did you write that?
Yeah, I first want to say that, Paul, your comments resonated with me, so you said it a lot better than I ever could, so I'd like to associate with that. And then, is there, I wish there were more accessible units in every one of our developments, because even if we may temporarily not need them, we eventually will, depending on what happens in our lives or aging. I'd be interested in knowing what's the distribution of like studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms? I mean, how many of these units might be appropriate for families?
So in terms of the proposed unit mix,
Yes.
we're proposing 30 studios, 24 junior 1 bedrooms, 99 1 bedrooms, 21 junior 2 bedrooms, and 35 2 bedrooms.
How many of those junior? The junior bedrooms?
There's 24 junior 1 bedrooms and 21 junior 2 bedrooms.
So nothing that, so a couple of nothing that would be larger than a 2-bedroom unit.
We have not proposed anything larger than a 2-bedroom. So I would say that we also own both Crystal Flats and Crystal Towers. And so the Crystal Towers was built in the mid-60s. That has 56 3-bedrooms and 2 4-bedrooms. And even the 2 bedrooms there are almost average 1,400 square feet. So they are very large kind of family style units. We are trying to diversify the unit mix overall, and trying to propose units that we don't currently, that we can't currently offer to potential tenants.
And also, how green will this building be?
So we're complying with the Green Building Incentive Program. So that requires LEED Gold certification.
Okay.
Meeting the 20% energy performance, along with a whole host of other prerequisites related to bird glass and kind of biophilia. So there's specific
On-site solar.
Yeah, so we are proposing on-site solar, which is something that I don't know that anybody has done yet before, at least in the way that we're proposing it.
I have more questions. So this building, obviously it, with having the 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, like there's families living there, that surrounding area. Like, when kids are around, like what I've noticed is like when new developments come up, it's very like, keep everything pristine, don't sit here, don't sit there type thing. And in our county, like we want to incentivize the younger kids to be out, like, we have a really big problem with like mental health, all that stuff. We could deviate into that conversation, but we need to create spaces for people to get in groups or like play or have activities. Like if we're building this, across the street from like an affordable housing complex or something along those lines, like, are there any, I don't know if this is like relevant to this specific conversation, but I would like to bring up the point that instead of taking up space, for example, this parking lot that could be used for something like that, for like kids or recreation or something like of the sort, like would this hinder that, right? Especially in that area where there are parks, there are little areas where people can like get together and sit and everything like that, but it's not very like kid friendly, if that makes sense. So
And maybe part of that, like, are there family-friendly amenities that you guys
Yeah,
are
I think that's a
proposing
better
as
way
part
of phrasing that question. Sorry, I was trying to get my thoughts out, but
There's that whole biophilia thing that we've seen presented before with all those paths. Is that where, there's all those paths that go through and connect?
Yes, there are a number of paths. I'm looking for a separate presentation.
Park is, where is that big park?
Yeah,
So-
well, Robert's pulling enough from a park perspective.
So-
Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, from a park perspective, so with the delivery of Amazon and their phase, the phase one of their HQ2, which is located just 1 block north. So that does include a brand new children's playground, along with, I think, one of the larger and nicer parks in the county. I encourage you to visit it. We also own the Gramercy, which is adjacent to the playground, and the kids have been playing there late at night, very late at night, actually, surprisingly late at night. So in terms of what you're talking about, one of the benefits of the project is that we are taking what is today surface asphalt parking, and we are converting it into more usable space. So we're able to expand the plantings on the kind of interior of the site. And then this isn't, I think, exactly what you're getting to, but we do see this as additive to all 3 communities that we have.
it's already there.
Given that we own Crystal Flats, given that we own Crystal Towers, that we have incorporated this outdoor programmable space. So this is intended to be artificial turf, where we could run classes or run events that would bring members from all 3 of those communities, or potentially the public. There's no gates here, there's nothing stopping the public
Yeah,
from
okay,
coming and
that's
enjoying
what
this.
I was getting at. Is there any?
So there is no kind of public easement, so it still is private property. But it's not a gated off kind of community as some of the amenities for Crystal Towers, right? That there is a gate that would kind of keep it reserved for the residents. So I don't know if that was helpful in addressing.
Yeah, it
the
was,
question.
thank you. Appreciate that.
Is the retail being built over what's now a parking lot? That's correct.
Yeah, the retail right here is being built over that surface parking lot.
Okay.
And so one of the things that we realized in looking at the historic operations of the building, going back several years, is that this was built under a different paradigm. And that we weren't using all the parking that we had. And so was there a ability to transform that kind of underutilized surface parking, surface asphalt into something that might be more productive and contributing towards the community, providing both housing and retail?
And you may have already stated this, but presumably, is there gonna be underground parking?
So
Or is this the one where we're borrowing the parking that's?
that would be Americana.
Okay, sorry. I just remembered that one.
So we do have one level of below-grade parking where we're adding 42 spaces onto the existing parking garage.
Okay,
So we are building what we believe is sufficient parking.
to make up for
That's correct.
taking.
Does the county have any, when they're doing the density negotiations and things, other than community benefits related to like transportation or like parks and other spaces like that, and then affordable housing, are they able to talk about like unit size and bedroom numbers? Like, does the county have any authority to be able to say, hey, as a county, we need more 3 bedrooms, so we'd like to see more of that in exchange for additional density, or?
So yes, if there was on-site units as part of a density package, the county does have the ability to say, we want to prioritize family-size units or 3-bedroom units. The trade,
Only for affordable units?
Yeah,
not
that's
for
for
market
affordable.
rate?
only for affordable, oh yes, only for affordable.
Oh, really?
Yes, so, right, yes. No, there's no control over the market rate size of it. But yes, for affordable units, they do have that ability. Obviously, family size units are valued higher, so they would take up more of the package, and it is somewhat exponential. So
Thank you.
3-bedroom units are even much more expensive than 2 bedrooms.
challenges of double booking people.
I told Joanne that, we can't rush you guys, and she goes, I thought you were splitting. I'm like, I think everybody gets the benefit of our team being here to discuss everything with them, like,
Yeah.
you matter too.
Just not as much as the planning commission.
I've been doing this for a while,
It's
and I
okay,
am not
we
phased in
understand.
this. So, these other people are more phased than I am. Like, they can wait a few minutes, I'm not.
Because we use it based off of
And then there are-
comparative.
Yeah,
exactly.
Doris, you have a question?
For 3 bedrooms, just so.
So high.
Yep, go ahead, Doris.
I was just
Advisory.
actually wanting to ask this question on a similar line when you just asked that question, which was, is there something that the county can do when it's in negotiations to get developers off the dime and be willing to put in more than just the minimum building code 2% for type A units? And it's kind of also prompted by this week, I attended a fair housing, a HUD Fair Housing Act training. And they were going all over the various codes that are applicable to, construction of accessible units. And then the second thing is how stringent is the inspection by code enforcement to ensure the fair housing safe harbors are enforced at the local level when new projects are built. The last part of that, which is kind of off the topic of the number of units, is whether the county can do something to ensure that developers are enforcing the Fair Housing Act, as I understood from what was presented by HUD, that they should have already set policies for requesting accommodations, and in particular, accommodations like parking spaces that are reserved for persons with disabilities. And so that's the question.
So, starting with the first question, can the county basically incentivize?
I mean, other than the 10% that you get to use tax credits is what I mean for private.
I don't want to say too much on that. I'm not aware of how the type A negotiation happens. I mean, obviously there is the 2% baseline that they have to meet. And as long as they meet that, I'm not aware of any reason that the county could stop the development going forward. I can look further into that and let everyone know. As far as how the inspections work for type A units, I'm also not sure. That is something I can look into. And then your last question, how can the county ensure requesting accommodations such as parking?
Now, ensure that from the get-go, the landlords will have in place policies regarding requesting reasonable accommodations and how they will handle, for example, reasonable modifications when somebody is forced to, who needs a modification, physical modification. What policies will be put in place to hopefully ensure, for example, that the tenant doesn't have to pay not just for their own apartments modifications, but modifications to common units, but So that's the kind of thing, but the question one related to the type A units, but question two actually related to the required minimum accessibility under the Fair Housing Act, so that would be required of all. Any development.
Yes, I'm not sure what exactly goes into every inspection. I'm sure that they do make sure that it is ADA compliant, but that is something I can check in with our inspections team on and report back to the full commission on.
And the incentive thing came from the Affordable Housing Master Plan, because, you know, it's saying we want to incentivize more accessible units, but the question is, like what I'm trying to get to is the NOFA for the NOFA process for the Affordable Housing Investment Fund does have a bonus small score for accessible units, you know, going from beyond the 2% to the 10%. But I'm not sure how it's, because there's so many projects that are going through without, you know, the landlords or the developers will say, well, we've got our minimum in there, and that's all. And then, you know, we kind of acquiesce at that, and that's, but it's not fine, because it's really a crisis between people with disabilities who want to live in the community and independently, but they need accessible places to live, and aging members of the community who a large percentage will develop some kind of physical limitation or disability and could stay where they are if we had more, at least units with basic accessibility. Thank you for allowing me to say that.
Alex, does the county have any authority? My guess is the answer is no. In a site plan negotiation to negotiate, like having the applicant set aside a fund for reasonable modifications for disabled residents, which is another way, like if they're not gonna build them up front, you would think you could sort of negotiate, hey, set aside 20 grand a year so that if you have residents who need reasonable modifications, instead of having them pay out of pocket, they can dip into this fund. And it's okay if you don't have an answer to that question, but.
Yeah, I do not have an answer to that question right now, but I can talk with the site plan negotiation team and get back to you all.
My assumption is no, because it seems to be no on everything that we ask about site plan negotiation authority. It also makes me think, next month, we're gonna talk about legislative priorities at the state level, that talking about having the county endorse broader site plan negotiating authority is important, because it keeps coming up. We heard last month about they couldn't do anything around habitability for the units because they don't consider the habitability to be something inherent to the like residential building or something. It's a ridiculous thing, but yeah, I think, you know, same thing with bedroom size and other factors that we talk about, that it'd be nice to have the county have some negotiating, at least the authority to request it. Yeah, that's something that I think the commission should look at for recommending as a legislative priority, because we keep hearing, oh no, we can't do that. Yes, Elizabeth.
Do we have an idea as to the price range of these units?
The units in the new building, it'll be market, and so it's determined more at, you know, the time that the building's opening. So it'll be similar to what, you know, a unit in the Americana would cost, depending on square footage and size, or any other newer buildings in Crystal City. Really probably comparable even to the buildings built in the last 5 years or so, what rents are right now and what they would be in a few years.
So that's gonna be 2,000, we've heard this before, like 2,000 2,300 for 500 square foot. Something like that. Yeah.
I'm
more closer to 3.
Yeah.
That's what I just encourage. Maybe we could vote.
Yes.
Just looking at the time and how much is on our agenda. Sorry.
The team probably
I'm gonna
needs
take
to be
on
the planning
Eric's.
Commission, but I think they'll survive without their lawyer.
I'm gonna take on Eric's role from the past.
I'd like to move that we approve the Crystal Towers 3 site plan this before us. But I'd like the communication accompanying this to reflect some of the issues that we continue to raise about including more accessible units in the buildings, the continuing concern about that Paul raised, that it seems, I'm not trying to offend anybody here. It seems too easy for the developers to take the option of spending money someplace else instead of having some affordable units so that we have some diversity of the types of people living in these buildings, which I think is a desirable goal. We're better when we have a mix of people in these buildings. I think that's a goal that we all share, whether they're elderly, disabled, different economic backgrounds, whatever. So, you know, I think it's going to be a lovely project. It's well thought of. It's across the street from some affordable units and it's a great location, all that. So I don't want to diminish that, and I don't want to not approve it because it gets targeted because of our ongoing concerns. So I'm moving that we approve it and that the transmission communication includes some of these concerns as the asterisk that I want us to put the pen on in. I'm going to be like the Mike Heminger hat now. I'm not supposing we put together a work group or anything, but we keep raising these same issues. We got to find a way to work with the county, with the board and our staff to create some sort of way of you know, new policy, maybe something connected to NOFAs, legislative. I mean, we should explore all the different ways we could really push this and advocate. It won't happen overnight, but I'm getting frustrated with raising the same concerns because it's become, you know, I think developers just expect they can do this. And, you know, that's a rational decision from your point of view, but we have a different concern that we'd like to push and make these really great developments available to more people, diverse people.
Okay, were you raising your hand for a second, or did you have a friendly amendment, or?
Just a comment on her. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I mean, maybe a work group is the answer, almost just like I don't know, I've only been on this commission for a few months, but it just feels like formality at this point, our voting.
Yeah.
And it's like, if we actually want to make policy change, maybe we need to have a work group or switch something because this capitalism, right? They're gonna do what's best for them and their investors. So us voting and suggesting, oh, do this and that, it's not gonna happen. They have no incentive to do it. So maybe we do need a work group to try and push the county to move somewhere else.
I think that is a separate question from this vote, though.
I'm seconding Laura's.
Okay, so we have.
I know everybody wants to go home, but like,
yes.
we're actually trying to like, never mind.
No, I appreciate that.
No, I totally get it, because it's the same thing. I've been on this commission for
We're
years.
gonna-
It's the same
We're
thing.
gonna do roll call. So Commissioner Escobar?
Was there a second?
Yes. Well, we
I
had
was
two.
the
second. Okay, thank you.
Now we're to the vote.
Yes,
Yeah.
so it's a yes or a no. Or no, Steve.
Or do you want us to come back to you?
Yeah, can you go?
Okay, yep, circle back. Commissioner Surface?
Yes.
Commissioner McBeth, I vote yes. Commissioner Edwards?
Yes.
Commissioner McGilvray?
I'm going with Paul, no.
Okay. Commissioner Heminger?
Nope.
I think there was a voice, but you
He's
couldn't hear
muted.
it.
You came off mute, but I didn't hear you, Mike.
No.
No? Okay. Commissioner Blake?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
No.
Commissioner Rubalcaba?
Yes.
Commissioner Montgomery?
Abstain.
Okay. Commissioner Escobar?
No.
Okay. That was, you guys made this hard, okay.
I
How many for?
have 5-4-1, it passes.
Okay.
5 yeses, 4 noes, 1 abstention.
Okay. So it passes. Thank you all. Thank you very much for your time.
Great discussion. I'll note that, we frequently do on-site units. It just completely depends on the situation and the negotiation of that doesn't detract at all from the points that are made, so.
Okay. Let's go on to the ARPA.
Good luck with the.
Yes.
Yes.
Probably mostly done with that.
And I know they have similar concerns.
They do, so I'm gonna go have the same discussion with them. It's wonderful to see all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so
Are they going before the planning commission too tonight?
they are not. The ARVA is not. So, and that is because they are not going to the county board until July. We're getting them a month early, and just kind of has to do with how our agenda has shaken out, and the contribution was basically finalized in time for this meeting. So we decided to go ahead, but I realize I'm not sharing my screen.
I feel like these have tentatively or almost been our agenda for like 2 months in a row. And then,
Yes.
yeah, it keeps shifting.
I'm so
Oh,
sorry.
Mike's got a question.
Go ahead, Mike.
Hey, everyone. I just wanted to align myself with Commissioner Brown's comments, and I was wondering if that could be included in our letter that we send to the board.
Yes. Yes, we will do that. And with that letter, everyone will have a chance to review it, make revisions as well in case we miss anything. We'll try to give people more than 24 hours to do that as well.
Okay, well. What's that? Well, the slideshow is not working, it appears, but we can.
You just click through.
Yeah, I'll just click through like this.
So you hit the slideshow tab?
Mouse also isn't working, unfortunately.
Place. The slideshow tab?
Then the slideshow
There's
button.
also
the
a
tab.
top.
Yeah. And then put beginning. No, it's not working. Never mind.
Oh,
Oh, it's in another screen.
why?
It's okay.
All right.
Like this.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a short presentation on the ARVA, and then I'll pass it over to the applicant who's online. So, moving on to the second site plan here of the night. This site is at 2201 Arlington Boulevard, right on Pershing and 50 there. And what is being proposed is the demolition of the existing Days Inn Motel and the development of an 8-story, up to 8 stories, mixed-use building with ground floor retail. There will be 251 residential units and 2,900 square feet of retail. And this is located within the Pershing Drive Special Land Use Study Area, which I will get to a little bit more in a second. So just a quick refresher for everyone on the general land use plan. So the plan establishes the overall character, extent, and location of various uses and serves as the guide for decision-making related to future development. Also called the GLUP. The GLUP map conveys guidance through land use designations, which indicate a range of densities and typical uses for a particular location. So, typically, if the site is not within a sector plan area, such as the Clarendon sector plan or the Crystal City sector plan, then a special GLUP study is done to determine if the requested changes to the site are appropriate. And so this site is not within a sector plan area in Arlington. So the applicant, Arlington Boulevard LLC, submitted an application for a special GLUP study for the property. And they basically requested a GLUP amendment from low medium residential and service commercial to low office apartment hotel with an associated rezoning. So that process began in October 2020, and the study was adopted by the county board in July 2021. So the main takeaway from an affordable housing standpoint of the study was that any GLUP amendment enacted to achieve the recommendations of the study will be subject to an affordable housing requirement in addition to the base site plan affordability requirement. This additional affordability would be achieved through on-site affordable units equivalent to 20% of the difference in floor area between the maximum density under the existing GLUP designation and the project's proposed density under the new GLUP designation. So, this GLUP amendment, it's also referred to as an up-GLUP, if you see that on the screen. So the affordable housing program is, they'll be meeting the base of $520,000 contribution, or the 3 on-site units, the 4 off-site units, or the 5 off-site just off-site units somewhere in the county. In addition to that base contribution, they'll be providing 7 total on-site caps. So a few notes here. That 20% number, which was to be achieved, was 8,200 square feet. So we are getting a little bit more than that, closer to 8,500 square feet. And then another big point is obviously the emphasis on large unit size. That's something that not just this commission, but others have been bringing up. And so not only will there be some 2-bedroom loft units, which are actually bigger than regular 2-bedroom units, but there will be 2 3-bedroom units as part of the package. So these will be affordable for the standard up to 60% AMI for 30-year term. But it does add 7 CAFs to an area where there aren't currently a lot of CAFs. There's some in the building that's right across the street, but it doesn't have a lot of other CAFs in that direct area. And then it also is delivering those larger units. So, and then just a few quick other notes, ones that we talked about in the last one. The applicant has not submitted a special site plan exception in the past. This is a new applicant. And then there will be at least 6 type A market rate units in the building. And they haven't made a commitment to how many of those will be CAF type A units yet. That's the one last piece we're still working through, but they can speak to this. They have a desire to deliver on-site type A CAFs at the property, and that will be finalized in the condition language within the next month. So that is it for my presentation, and I can go ahead and hand it off to Matt. Are you on? Yes.
Matt, you're muted.
All right, still doing that all this time. Well, good evening, everybody. Ashton, are you able to grab screen control there and pull up our presentation?
I will attempt it. Let's see how it goes.
Well, while we're doing that, good evening, everybody.
Increase volume at all? Do we want to, can we increase volume or do we increase volume?
I think we would.
Sorry?
I don't see the volume thing down there, do you? Oh,
Yep.
There you go.
You all able to hear me okay?
Better.
It's a little bit better.
Okay.
And more on our sides and the teams.
Yeah.
All right, well, good evening, everybody. I'm Matt Roberts with Hirschler. I'm the land use and zoning attorney on the project. I'm here tonight with Ashton Allen and Brian Arias from Studios Architecture. Happy to be here and looking forward to the discussion. As Alex said, we're here to discuss the ARVNA site plan, GLUP amendment and rezoning. Quick background, just to walk you through, because you may have passed by the site a number of times, may not be as familiar with it as we are at this point. Site is on Pershing Drive, right at the intersection with Arlington Boulevard, directly across the street from Fort Myer, and we're in the Lion Park neighborhood. As you probably are aware, it's developed today with the Days Inn Motel. That was built back in 1955, more or less. We'll talk about that in a second and the history that's there. It's currently split zoned, and as Alex mentioned, up until now, there really hasn't been much planning for the site. That being said, going back to when 2201 Pershing, right across the street, was approved back in, I think, 2006, there was actually some indication then that this site in the future for what we ought to do with it and replanning efforts in the future, but it was put off for another day. Next slide, please. Other way.
There we go.
There we are. The site does have a fairly long history, but it has always been a motel, at least since 1955. Originally known as the Arva, and we've done quite a bit of research into that history. These guys at Studios have pulled a lot of interesting stuff off of eBay, that you might not have imagined you could find. But the Arva Motel was really sort of a signature for the site with that blade sign and lobby. And as we'll talk about a little bit, we're going to seek to honor that historic aspect of the site with the site redevelopment. Next slide. And it's evolved over the years. It's been a couple different types of franchises, ultimately culminating on what it is today as the Days Inn. But again, certain features of the site have always been notable. That blade sign in particular, the lobby that faces directly onto Pershing and Arlington Boulevard. And again, we'll show you how we're planning to adapt that into the building going forward. Next slide, please. Getting back to the planning for the site, as Alex said, we went through a fairly lengthy planning process with the Long Range Planning Commission and ultimately the county board, basically from 2020 to 2021. And the Arlington County Board ultimately approved our special bluff study in July 2021. That study basically asks us to implement a lot of different items and presents a vision for the site into the future. Ultimately saying that low office apartment hotel under the GLUP would be appropriate for the site, and a concurrent rezoning to CO15, which is what is called for under the low office apartment hotel designation, would also be appropriate. And so we filed several different applications for the site to implement that vision. One is the 4.1 site plan. We've also filed a rezoning and also a GLUP amendment, as Alex mentioned. So happy to discuss that a little further in depth with you if you had any questions about that. Next slide, please. So the GLUP set out, like I said, for some basic planning ideas and some key goals. Broadly speaking, it asked us to deal with a couple of major league issues. Primarily dealing with public spaces, creating new parks, which we'll talk about, and also improving what is now, an asphalt area adjacent to the site within VDOT right-of-way so that we can continue the trail from Arlington Boulevard on south. It also asked us to create a gateway architecturally into the neighborhood, essentially mirroring what's happening on the other side and creating and completing that gateway into Lion Park. And concurrent with that, we want to be sensitive to what's around us, both in terms of the multifamily residential at Washington and Lee, single family residential immediately in the neighborhood adjacent to us, and some of the low rise commercial. So we're providing transitions in height and density. And then last but not least, embracing that site history, which we'll talk about again. Next slide, please. The outcome of all that is ultimately a mixed-use redevelopment of the site, including 251 residential units and about 2,900 square feet of retail or retail equivalent space in the building. We'll also be providing a number of community benefits with the redevelopment, primarily in those open spaces along Wainwright on-site park. But also adding to bike lanes and other things. And then last but not least, and for this group's purposes, on-site affordable housing. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ashton to walk through some architecture, and then we'll be happy to discuss.
Great, thanks, Matt. And can folks hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Excellent. All right. Real big picture here. Architecturally, it's a really interesting site because of that history of the kind of doo-wop architecture, and I think some goals set up in the GLUP about carrying that forward and mixing it with the neighborhood. The neighborhood itself, if you've spent any time in Lion Park, is a remarkably diverse architectural neighborhood. This gave us a great palette to, I think, start to play in a really interesting way. Something that came up certainly in the last conversation about larger units on site. Before we get even into the architecture, we wanted to show where these 2-3 bedroom lofts that are set aside for affordability. I will show you where this is in a 3D rendering so you can understand it better, but I just wanted to kind of quickly show it in plan before we get into the architecture. We're going to go through a series of diagrams that show what was intended in the GLUP and then what we are providing with architecture. So in this diagram, we're seeing Pershing Drive bend off to the right and Arlington Boulevard peel off to the left. And this is, as Matt said, that kind of historic blade sign and lobby identity, which we've carried forward in this architecture with the lobby identity, a refurbished blade sign, which is a vast improvement over what's there today. But as you see when you kind of zoom in, is really building on the character of that original ARVA sign that I think provided a lot of character and a lot of unique history on this site. This is the view looking across Pershing Drive, so it's as if we're standing on that development to the north that was developed in the early 2000s, looking south. So you see this drop-off court between two arms of the building, and you also see there's actually an internal private drive and access where all the service and loading is taken care of internal to the site, but it's also kind of this light at the end of the tunnel portal that I think does a lot to transform the site from what's there today, which is a very parking lot focused site, to a pedestrian and mixed mode focused site. This is the view. We've flipped now. Pershing Drive is this on the left, and Wayne is down here on the south of the site, really focusing on this park that's going to be delivered, a 10,000-foot new park for the neighborhood. That's a public use. Public access easement. This is a view of the architecture as it sets back there with this park at that size. We've actually eliminated a driveway access that had been in the GLUP, was we thought it would be a better park experience to actually have it activated by program on all sides and relocated those services elsewhere. This is a view, again, looking across Wayne and down this particular type of drive called a muse. The intent here in the GLUP was a mixed mode transit that was for cars, pedestrians, and bicycles that connected through underneath the building to the improved trail that is going to run along Arlington Boulevard in the Virginia Department of Transportation space. But this is kind of it in plan from the GLUP. And then in the actual design, that's basically taken verbatim with this multimodal drive sidewalk trail that transitions into a pedestrian only zone as it passes under the building. The 3-bedroom units that we talked about are actually these right here. So they essentially are kind of acting like townhomes with ground floor access, and they're in line with other market rate units. We think it's a great community building piece of this project, and across from Washington Lee and with immediate access to this portal down through the trail. And you also see the kind of park here to the right. Obviously, the design of that is going to be taken care of through the Parks Commission as part of that public access easement as a proffer. Finally, views kind of looking along. This is Arlington Boulevard. Fort Myers on the right, the proposed development in the GLUP. And then this is a kind of along Arlington Boulevard, but zoomed into this new multi-use trail, which is extending the bike path and improving it. And then pulling back across Arlington Boulevard, here you see the median, that ARVA sign, and the architecture itself, which is that blend of kind of doo-wop with the kind of the architecture angle of this sign kind of flipped on and planned into the balconies and expression as it goes around the building. With that, I'm going to turn it back to Matt.
Just really quickly. So the question becomes, how are we going to accomplish all of this? And obviously, the county has a few mechanisms that we can borrow from. So we're doing a couple different things in terms of community benefits to ultimately earn the density above what we could earn in the base with the CO15 district. And I've touched on a few of those already. Ashton has touched on them. We are going to be providing LEED Gold certification for the site. We are doing 2 major public space improvements along the VDOT right-of-way to continue that trail, and also a 10,000 square foot park, more or less. We'll also be providing some off-site bike lanes, protected bike lanes that the county asked us to do. And then, for this group's purposes, and as Alex mentioned earlier, we will be having on-site affordable housing. I will say we are not earning bonus density from that. It is a result of the UPGLUP that we've requested, but we are providing 7 on-site units, and they are quite a bit larger than I think you would normally find in most applications this size. And that really came from discussions with Lyon Park community and staff. So, we are providing some 3-bedroom units, 2-bedroom lofts, and so forth. So very pleased with that package and happy to discuss it. But with that, thank you very much for your time, and we're looking forward to speaking with you all.
Thank you very much. I think it looks like a really interesting building. So just from a design perspective, it's nice to see something different
Yes.
than all of the almost replicated designs that we see for every other residential building. You probably saw this question coming, but again, if there's already going to be 7 on-site units, having 3 additional on-site units as part of the base ordinance, it would be preferable from an affordable housing standpoint, as opposed to the $520,000 contribution to AHIP. And again, I can understand hesitation if there weren't going to be any on-site affordable housing units, but since there's already 7, it seems like adding 3 more is probably less of a lift from a management and planning perspective than if there were none to begin with. Was that discussed, doing that? And I know probably with all the other projects too, that's not a decision that has to be made until later in the process, right? But I would like to at least strongly urge, if that is still something that you all can consider doing, to have those additional 3 units be on site to make it an even 10.
Sure. So, as you've noted, it's not a decision that we make at this stage. We haven't come to a final conclusion on it. We're certainly, keeping options open. I will say that, candidly, we very likely will end up making the contribution. For a project of this size, in this location, adding additional affordable housing above, what we're already doing with the larger units is impactful. And frankly, doing the larger units, we think is a fairly big contribution for a project of this size relative to what else we might see similar in the neighborhood. But certainly appreciate the comment. We'll keep all options open until we have to make our decision.
Other questions, comments?
Can I just ask, in terms of the 2,900 commercial space, given that there is a fair amount of commercial space that was built into the building across the way and the building down, and it has appeared to be commercial space that, wasn't always filled. Are you completely wedded to that? Is there enough market study behind that to back it up? I'm just a little concerned about that 2,900, given the other commercial space that's there in the neighborhood.
Sure. Yeah, it's certainly, something we think about pretty often. The Gluff study had some suggestions about where that might have gone, even suggesting that we should put it at the corner of Pershing and Arlington Boulevard. We declined to do that, for the exact reason you just mentioned. You don't want something sort of dead at the corner. That does not, that doesn't yield anything good for that pedestrian access there. So what we've labeled it as right now is retail or retail equivalent. The Gluff study does ask us to look for retail uses in the short term. So it could be something like a coffee shop or something complementary to what else we're seeing in the neighborhood. We do see it as neighborhood serving. One difference, and maybe one thing that really kind of pulls retail to this site, is that park. So putting the retail next to the park, we think is actually a benefit long term. So if we can find a user, that's perfect, and we'll certainly be aiming for that. We are keeping the flexibility, though, to provide some retail equivalent space, something that's activating but ultimately service to the building. Again, no perfect final discussions on that just yet, but we would, if Nan was here, and unfortunately he's not this evening. I think he's dealing with his daughter in college visits. Nan would tell you if he had his druthers, he would have a golf simulator at this site. He would love to find something retail wise to do here. So it's top of mind for him.
Thank you.
So just to follow up on that, so retail equivalent might mean a gym for something for the residents or something. It's not necessarily, I mean, I think you said it doesn't have to be leased out to a third party. It could be internal, is that right?
Correct. Yeah. So that's certainly one option. I wouldn't say that it's going to be the gym. Ashton could speak to that more directly. But retail equivalence in the county's parlance is even a little bit broader than just building service or something serving the building. We have certain categories of like medical office use, as a for instance, that are not categorized as retail. They are categorized as retail equivalent. And so the county over the last couple of years has allowed us to put retail equivalency into the plans now, so we don't have to come back later if we got like a dentist or doctor's office or something. Not saying that's what it is, but it does provide us the flexibility to do something activating like that.
Thank you. A couple of questions. So the Muse extension through to Arlington Boulevard, will that be publicly accessible?
Yes.
Excellent. The units, in addition to being large in bedroom count, also seem to be large in square footage. Was that, for instance, the 805 square foot one bedroom, is that a net rentable square footage, or is that sort of gross, including common area?
I can jump in on this a little bit, Matt. So those one bedroom units are in fact one bedroom plus den units. So again, speaking to Matt's point, all of the units that we've looked to dedicate are oversized. So that one bedroom unit really is a family focused one bedroom that can be, parent's bedroom and a child without a window. And that kind of carries through the two bedroom units are also 2 bedrooms plus den. So I think getting back to Matt's earlier point about a focus that's really aiming to what the community was looking for at Lion Park, which was a family size unit focus, that's how that entire programming is set out. And we're frankly pretty proud of it. Like Matt said, for a project this size, it's pretty bold across what we've seen.
So those are net rentable then?
Those are net rentable. Those are net areas in there. We have gross area calculations in other places, but those are large one bedrooms, yes.
Well, all the units are large. I think that's fantastic. How does the proportion of, or what proportion of those, say, family size units in terms of bedrooms do these affordable units represent? Like, do you have other 3 bedroom units? If so really the only ones are the affordable ones?
Correct. Yeah, so we made a choice with this project, again, after having a lot of discussions with the community, and we've met with Lion Park. I don't even know how many times at this point. I have to go back and count them all up. But we've tried to do a lot of outreach and make sure that we're capturing community comments. And so that was one we heard repeatedly. We actually had a pretty good discussion with them at our last meeting in April on, how you sort of calculate these things. And Ashton gave a great explanation. In a lot of ways, those 2 bedroom lofts really do act as a family unit. But we also made the decision to convert some of those to create, true 3-bedroom units along that muse. So, we've taken a lot of time and a lot of energy in the housing part of this discussion.
Could I just ask one more question? So who is the developer?
Sure. So the family that owns it, Nan Patel and his family, they are generally hotel operators in and around the DC area. You would know them if I gave you, other of their sites. But Nan is the owner operator, will be taking this forward for development. He intends to own it long term, has no plans to sell that I know of.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Anika and then Lauren.
Oh, but I think Mike has
Yeah,
his
Mike.
hand up.
Oh, sorry. Okay, Mike, go ahead.
Thanks. Matt, I think I heard you say you are a land use attorney. Is that right?
That is correct. Guilty as
cool.
charged.
I just wanted to kind of lift up some of the things that the chair was mentioning. Did you ever get a chance to read the book, The Color of Law?
I'm aware of it. I don't know that I've ever actually sat down and read through it.
Okay, it's a great book. Really highlights a lot of the stuff that I think this commission continues to talk about. But, in Arlington, the way that we do affordable housing, we don't have an authority. And you may know this, I apologize if I'm repeating it, but we end up concentrating poverty into the same buildings. It's 100% committed affordable. Those units end up being predominantly 90 to 95% people of color. And, time and time again, we're hearing from residents that the living conditions that they're living in are just completely unacceptable. You can Google Toronto. The Shelton had made the news today in RL Now, so that's another good case study. But ultimately, the life outcomes for people that end up in these buildings are about 10 years. They're living 10 years less than their counterparts in other areas of the county. They, aren't given the same level of treatment, level of services. They might not ever see anyone that looks like them living outside of poverty. And so like that generational cycle of, living in poverty continues. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. I know that as a developer, it's not, you're here to make the most money, and I don't blame you for that. But in DC and Montgomery County, they actually do have laws, and it's inclusionary zoning. And, developers are required to put 15% of committed affordable units on site. And so, while the laws don't currently, require you to put more, I would just like to say, as a developer in our community, we've established the values that we kind of want to uphold. And, if you want to be a part of our community, I would just encourage you to kind of look at what the outcomes, developers like you are causing. But I did have 2 questions. And the first one was on parking. It looks like parking will be about 1-to-1. Is that right on the ratio?
It's 0.8.
0.8. Okay, great. And then the last thing was, I was wondering if you could pull up the last slide of the presentation that you had. And this might be more of a Transportation Commission question, but I do just want to make sure that it's highlighted or flagged somewhere. So, in the deck that there you go, on Arlington Boulevard there on the right, there's a very, high velocity traffic that travels on that route. And I appreciate that we're putting, I think, a bike path or a trail there, but is there some type of like barrier or something in case someone like goes up on the sidewalk? Or
Yes, it's a large tree stand.
a large, one more time, I didn't hear you.
The tree stand that's shown on the images there, if Ashton can pull it back out.
Okay.
Those trees are existing today in the VDOT right of way. We recently got a comment from VDOT to replace those, but we'll essentially be replacing them one for one along that edge of Arlington Boulevard. So what you're seeing is Arlington Boulevard tree stand / landscaping strip. Then the path starts. Then there's a separate sort of berm and buffer before you get to the residential units on that side.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Sure. I guess just to quickly respond to the first comment there, though, I mean, this application is providing on-site affordable housing. So I think we are meeting the county's intent and desires. I've been doing our land use in Arlington for 10+ years, and that's something I've always encouraged my clients to do.
Thank you, Matt. Anika and then Laura.
The 3 bedrooms, is there a den with the 3 bedrooms?
No,
No, it's flat out 3, okay.
Laura?
there's certainly living room space and other than that, but there isn't a separated den space like you might have in the 2-bedroom den.
Okay.
It may have been on one of those slides, but some of the print was really small and I couldn't see it, but the number of disabled accessible units?
Sure. So the type A units, we have to provide a minimum of 6 with this application. 251 units taken over 2% is 6, more or less, and that's actually rounded up. But in any event, the goal is to provide as many of those in the affordable housing side as possible, and then whatever we can't accommodate in the affordable housing number of units would be on the market rate side, but overall, we'd be providing 6.
So on this project, are all of the type A, they're in that group of 7 affordable?
The goal is to place as many of them into affordable units as possible. And then if we, whatever we're able to accommodate in that, we'll capture up to 6 if we can. But, anything below 6 in the affordable side would be recaptured on the market rate side for type A units. So we haven't come to a complete conclusion yet on exactly the allocation between these two things. But overall, the building will have a minimum of 6.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to wrap up discussion on this. I think motion-wise, I'd like to make a motion that we approve this, similar to the last motion that we had for Crystal House, that we recommend that the units be instead of in lieu of 520,000, that it's 3 additional on-site units. Any changes to that? Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Margaret. And then let's do roll call votes. Let's go with Commissioner Escobar,
Yes.
Commissioner Surface.
Yes.
I vote yes. Commissioner Edwards,
Yes.
Commissioner McGilvray,
Yes.
Commissioner Heminger,
Yes.
Commissioner Blake,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Rubalcaba,
Yes.
Commissioner Montgomery.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time tonight. Appreciate, again, the design of the building, the 7 on-site units, and you presenting before us tonight.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody. We appreciate the time and look forward to taking this forward.
Thank you.
So Kelly, can I just
Yes.
reiterate for the group that, but also maybe some of the folks who are new, that, and sort of piggybacking what Laura said, that I think, and you said that maybe we do want to look at, but in order for us, am I correct, Alex? In order for us to adjust the base requirements and all of that to either be like Montgomery County, where we're forcing units on site versus the cash payment, that requires an action in Richmond, a legislative action.
Correct.
So I just think that's important for us to recognize that I think, and going back, I think we can make these statements, but we may want to make a blanket statement and not with each specific development, because developers are gonna, it's human nature to go to the point that you need to go to and not necessarily beyond that. And from a financial standpoint, I'm sure they're pushing those limits. So just so that we don't kill ourselves with each and every one of these.
I like the idea of a template. That's what you're saying?
Yes. And then to then go back to, I think we're planning on having the discussion around legislation, and we can really attack it from that perspective.
That makes so much sense, Margaret. Thank you.
So the next agenda item is the review of the Housing Commission Charter. So hopefully, what's that?
I think Mike had a question.
Oh, Mike, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, just briefly, I think, I hear the point on, each property, but I also think as a commission, when we look back over the last, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, when someone FOIAs these records, what they're going to see is that a commission has kind of brought this up over and over and over and over again But, maybe we have language that we just kind of put into each letter. But then, offline, I did ask the chair if we could get Matt DeFerranti at an upcoming meeting, just so that we can express this to him. But I do think that there's importance in, kind of showing that we've talked about it over and over again.
Thank you, Mike.
I don't think we would lose the ability to talk about it, but it might be a much more focused conversation.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying.
Okay, so hopefully everyone had a chance to look through the charter that I sent out a couple weeks ago. We're supposed to look at this every 3 years. It's been quite a bit longer, I think, since the commission has reviewed the charter. My goals in the edits that I proposed were making it a bit easier to read and also refer to different sections. So adding like the section headers. Also for me, the name change was big because we are technically the Citizens Advisory Commission on Housing. No one calls it. We don't call ourselves that. And I'm big on you should have on paper what you do in practice and not have a mismatch between the two. So I think we should just be the Housing Commission because that's what everyone thinks our name is anyways.
Here.
Some other things, just updating in the functions and scope, added equity focus, trying to clarify some of the language, also added basically a fair housing element to that as well with the affirmative of furthering fair housing, expanded the like where it was calling out specific groups to pay attention to, other historically marginalized populations that feed into the equity framework that we'll be discussing. And let's see. Then the membership section, it's been I don't know the last time the county board actually paid attention to having specific numbers of representatives from each of these categories. So again, I know that is not the current practice. I want this to reflect what we actually do, and if the board is not going to pay attention to, and the chairs are not going to pay attention to having specific numbers of representation from each category, I don't think it makes sense to be in our charter that way. It can just be, these are the types of members that sit on the commission. And also I realize that under membership, it should be changed to the Housing Commission. That looks like one that escaped my red pen. So that is a change to be consistent with the rest. And then added the vice chair, so that's a position that we've had on the Housing Commission, but it wasn't in our charter, so just included that. Subcommittee membership, I don't remember if it was board staff or county staff that took out the specific names of the subcommittees. They didn't want them referred to anymore. I didn't make that change. So this has been reviewed by Matt DeFerranti, his staff, as well as many county staffers in the county attorney's office. I took several months to go through this. And then, let's see, other significant changes. So I added the quorum of voting section because we've had questions and some confusion about that. So I wanted to hopefully make it a bit more clear by writing down what our actual, practice is for quorum and voting.
But one question here
Yes.
is do we need to make any reference to the whole? Because my understanding is that it has to be quorum in the room. And so I wondered whether we hope, no, because we don't hope that the hybrid goes away, because we like at least the hybrid, because that gives us a little bit of virtual, so.
Well, and we do
But I
have-
just wondered whether we wanted to, because that's been a little bit of a sticking point for us.
Yeah, I mean, we do have 2 virtual meetings, fully virtual a year as well. I mean, I think, because we already refer to up above that we'll follow the electronic meeting policy.
Okay.
I think that covers it.
Okay.
But that's something that I think in general, the commission just needs to be better at. Like, we need people in person to have quorum, and every meeting this year, we've been a little bit like unsure, are we gonna actually be able to take any action because are we gonna have enough people in person? So that is really important. Outside of the charter, it's just important that people are here. And if they're not going to be here, that they let us know in advance. I added the sentence about how abstentions work, because for those who were here last year, we had that concern. I think, was it with the Amazon vote, where we had like an equal number of extensions, I think, as we had people voting for it. And originally we thought it failed, and then the county attorney's office said, no, it actually passed. I tried to clarify that by writing that in here. The county attorney's office removed it and said, no, don't put it in there. I'm not sure why, but they were adamant about that. So I guess they want to be the only ones who know how it's supposed to work, but yeah, so those are some of the major changes that that we made to it. Yes.
Sorry, Kelly, is it 4 years or was it 3 years?
It's 4, that has not changed.
Okay.
One question for, perhaps more for Alex, is that just because I sit on CIDSAC, so do we actually oversee home funds, or is that under CIDSAC's jurisdiction? So that's in number 2 on here. So I was just surprised to see that.
So that, I would say generally it falls more under CIDSAC. There have been projects in the past, not in the last few years, but projects in the past that come forward and they do utilize both AHIF and home funding. So I think that's why it's mentioned here, but
I just was,
mostly
I just was like, oh, wait a minute, I thought that was somebody else's jurisdiction.
Yeah, and I didn't add that in, I just
No,
spelled
you
out
just
the acronym.
spelled it out.
But yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think one of the things about the Housing Commission, we have overlapping authority with many other commissions. It's at the Landlord Commission, CIDSAC to some extent, even the Planning Commission to some extent. Although, as we all know, they're much more powerful than we are. But any other questions or, yes?
So like, what happens when your 4-year term is up? You just get reappointed, or does someone contact you, or they say bye-bye, we never want to see you again?
So, usually either Alex or myself will reach out to the board member, and ask them if they want to be reappointed. And so I'm having conversations with the board liaison, so in this case, Matt DiFrenti, like pretty continually about membership and whose terms are expiring, and so it's kind of an informal process, but it's, either I will be alerted to it or Alex will say, hey, so-and-so's term's expiring, and then it's usually reach out, assuming that they're a member of good standing and they, no one wants to replace them. We just ask if they want to serve again, and then let Matt know, and he circulates it to the rest
The
of the board.
county board has to reappoint us.
Yes. Yep. Did you want that more specific in here,
As long
or?
as somebody understands.
Yeah. Yep, so after a person's term expires without reappointment by the board, they just automatically roll off the commission.
Maybe that should be in the charter. Is that kind of what,
Answers that
process that people should know? Yeah, that would
Because
be.
this is something that you would give a new commissioner and they would read it.
Yes, I guess I'm just wondering,
Well, I was gonna say, it's sort of like bylaws, and
well,
bylaws don't always get into the full process, do they?
that's probably in some other document that explains like how, for all commissions,
Yeah,
like the appointment
online.
process. So we can potentially spell it out here. We just have to be careful that whatever language we use matches whatever language is in other, and it probably would have to go through the legal review.
I think so.
So, yeah, a change like that would probably delay board approval of this for another month or so, but okay.
Well, we're recorded, so someone can go back.
Yeah.
You know, maybe just confirm it's documented somewhere else if it is.
Yeah,
I'm
I mean,
almost
I know.
positive it's on the website.
Yeah, and it definitely is documented somewhere, because the board can't do it unless it's written in an ordinance or something that gives them the authority to, so.
That seems fine.
Colin, I'm looking at the page on the county's, our commission's page on the county, even they call it the Housing Commission. It says Citizen Advisory Commission. I was looking there to try to see when my term's up, because I think I'm coming up on my 14th.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, do you?
We can send that out. So Alex has a roster.
no.
Well, the
of
roster,
everyone.
Yeah, Bailey,
it doesn't list like the terms.
Your
when
November of this year.
Yeah,
This
What
year,
about
okay.
me? I'm up, it's about.
we can send that out after the meeting.
That'd be great.
But yeah, Alex has one that he and I refer to, and we'll share with the whole commission.
Got it,
so
that'd be good.
people are aware, and also updating it with new members who have joined, and also other members who've rolled up. We lost both of our Erics in the last few months. We currently don't have a vice chair, so that is one of my priorities this year.
Should our term ending date be online?
None of the other
Because I
commissioners
feel-
list that.
I feel like the planning commission does.
Okay. That is possible because
Okay.
they're like statutory in nature.
Gotcha, okay.
But-
The Uber commission gets listed.
I know like kind of landlord commission and the other commission websites that look at me don't list like when people's terms end. But that's also, we can have a separate conversation with staff if we want to make changes to the website. But yeah, anything else on the charter?
No,
Good.
it was
Do you
good.
need a motion to approve it? Or-
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
Awesome. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Great, okay. So this will go to the county board and they will officially vote to adopt it, hopefully they're due. Next item on the agenda, the Housing Commission Equity Framework, which is probably one of the more exciting things for me. So this is something I put together because we talk about equity, the county talks about equity, but what does that mean for us as commissioners? This document was meant to provide a pretty straightforward and simple guide for commissioners to think about equity as it relates to the equity resolution that the board passed in 2019. And this was also meant to help be a starting point with staff as we look at trying to get more data about and more information about the equity analysis that staff is already doing or starting to do in a number of areas. And this also feeds into affirmatively furthering fair housing and looking at protected classes and how they're affected by different decisions that the government makes when it comes to housing. And technically, we fall under that because the county receives money. We're sort of an arm of the county loosely from HUD. And so we share an obligation as well to be thinking about, especially how protected classes and different groups are impacted by the decisions that we're recommending that the county makes. Yes.
When you're done, I have a question.
Okay. It outlines the different categories of individuals and this almost matches word for word what the county had in their equity resolution. County staff proposed some changes to it, and I've made some changes to make it a little bit clearer. And then where it says like who benefits, who's burdened, that comes from the county's racial equity framework, except I added the IE part, like to give some context. What does that mean when we say who benefits? So adding some prompts and some questions that we can sort of ask ourselves. And those are really the key pieces of this. That this is really meant to be for each one of us as we look at actions that come before us, thinking about are people of color impacted by this, are women, are people living in poverty, are immigrants and refugees, are LGBTQ plus community members impacted by this? Do we have any data that shows that? Is that something the county can provide to us? And then asking the questions, who benefits, who's burdened, who's missing, how do we know, and what do we do to help kind of shape and inform the conversation that we have. And so it could be asking the question of like, hey, for a site plan, who's burdened by this? It seems like there's existing residents who may be displaced by this. Is one or more population within this development going to be disproportionately burdened by the action that's being taken here? And that could be a question that's asked, or it could just be something that we individually think about as we're forming our own questions or thinking about whether we support or not support a particular project. But this is meant to be something that kind of guides how we look at actions before us.
Could
Yes.
it also not, to add to staff's burden, but could it be so when we do have like site plans and there's a staff presentation that goes along with that, that those 5 questions could be addressed as part of that?
We've discussed that.
Okay.
So I've had a couple meetings with staff about equity for a commission, going back to probably February, but most recently we met with like Samia and Venetia, other county staff. There's a lot of people in that meeting, to talk about this document, what it means, answer a lot of questions they had, go through edits that they had in it. And part of what we talked about and what I talked about previously was I'd like to get to the point, and you saw my question to Alex today about the accessible units and people with disabilities, that we want to see that in the presentations and in the reports coming before us. So we don't have to just separately think to ask that question, but we have that data that we consider beforehand. And if we have information about immigrants and refugees, by we, I mean the county, also including that in the presentation, saying here's how many people in, you know, this existing unit that's going to be redeveloped are immigrants or refugees, or we probably don't have a lot of information about sexual orientation or gender identity, but if we for some reason did, you know, including information about that as well. We're still in talks about what can the county do as far as, you know, shaping the memos and the presentations that they provide to us. That is my goal, to get to the point where like this is part of the template and that they're just sort of like, we're answering these questions for you, at least providing this data for you to consider. Or where we don't have that information, we're letting you know, hey, we don't collect this information. And then that maybe spurs a conversation, well, why don't we? Maybe we should. So that's ongoing. Part of it is resources. The county doesn't have a lot of resources to do that analysis on a regular basis. But Venetia did say when we last met, they do have a lot of data that is not included in what they send to us. Some of it goes to the board. And I did ask, can we start providing that to the Housing Commission? Because we would really like to see that. Like immigrants and refugees is one area which is like, oh, we do sometimes have information about that. I was like, oh, I didn't know that. So that's something that it's a continual conversation. This is meant to sort of be like a first step of we're committing as a commission to this is important to us. We want to start doing this. And then we can use this as a framework with staff to say, like, can you help us answer these questions as we're, you know, doing our review of items before us.
So first of all, I'm really pleased with this document, this framework, because I think once what I get out of this is, to the greatest extent possible, our decisions need to be data-driven in order to achieve the equity that we're looking for in the housing projects we review. So, but that's not an easy place to get, because even though the county's equity policy has been out there for a while, the racial equity policy, transforming these seemingly obvious questions into data points is hard. And I appreciate what Margaret said about not even adding more to Alex's burden for us. So this is where these questions come from. When I was reading point 4, I was like, is there a data dashboard or something somewhere for the housing data we're looking for? Like one place it's a home, and not just like the updated GLUP study, but like an actual dashboard where we could go and see, you know, or a collection of links to the databases so we can look up some of this information. I think that would be helpful. And we like put it on the Housing Commission page, the landlord tenant, put it somewhere where we can, anyone interested can go and find these data points, and like Venetia and everyone's got. That stuff doesn't do any of us any good when it's just siloed someplace in some office somewhere in this building or somebody's computer. So that's the first point. Is there a reason we aren't asking developers when they're making these presentations to also answer these questions in their presentation? Let them do some of the damn work. I mean, they shouldn't answer the questions.
I mean, this was, the way that I framed it for staff was, I'm not trying to like say you all have to do this. This is meant to be something that we're going to try to do, but we're going to be asking you for data to help us make these decisions. We can certainly work with staff to see, is it possible to, you know, add some of this content within what developers present. I think staff shares the same goal that we do of trying to get this information out to make sure that they're doing this analysis. It's a question, I think, of timing and resources. And so I hope that over the course of like the next year, we're gonna see more of this, but it may take some time. Yeah, go ahead, Boyd.
Kellen, I know where you're coming from. I thank you for representing in those meetings because I'm sure you got a lot thrown at you. But on this score, I'm going to stick to this point. I mean, not only should we be getting everything you just said from, you know, the county, and once they put it in there and they get this mindset, getting these tools available, it'll get easier over the time and they'll think, why didn't we do it sooner? But the reason I raised it, that the developers ought to be putting this into their presentations, they need to be thinking about this because look at the questions we keep giving them. It's all on this stuff. And you know, they can afford to pay their people a lot more than we can hire people for the county. Let them go and get this stuff and put it in there. They ought to be doing this automatically anyways. And I think this is a useful, you know, like suggestion to the county and as a requirement. Correct me if I'm wrong, when they're getting ready to make a presentation, do you have any guidelines or whatever that you say we need to see X, Y, Z in this? Or we advise you to do Y when you make this presentation?
When they come to the housing commission specifically. So basically when we, you know, most of them are familiar with the housing commission, but what we do is we send them basically email saying you're invited to the housing commission, please, you know, share your plans for the project. We let them know that we usually get questions on things like accessibility, so be prepared to answer things like that. But there isn't a specific checklist of things that.
Is there any rule that says we could provide them with a checklist?
Or at least guidance. We
Yeah.
can't force them.
I don't think there's.
Or say that it
a rule
even
that
like you
couldn't.
But maybe we could update, I'm not trying to tell you how to do your job, but I think this would get us the information we need, at least be helpful. And I'm just gonna go back to the core belief, they ought to be thinking about this anyways.
I mean, we can also give them this once it's approved and say, here's the questions we plan to ask you.
Yes,
If you're gonna
yes.
try to build this into your presentation, you know, please do that.
So as a person who serves people that are buying a home, it is very difficult sometimes to get all this information to people. People that are receiving services give me pushback all the time.
Gotcha.
They don't want to give any of this information. So the information's only going to be as good as the data that you get. And so there's got to be some sort of balance there.
That's a good point, Karen. I mean, it would be advisable that they do it. You can't force them, that's right. And maybe we can direct them to something. Again, this is where, I mean, I'm embarrassed, but I don't know where to find some of this data and I certainly should.
Well, I was gonna say, the who is burdened is you could do because HUD already has mapping systems that you can go into and check down to the sub-census block group in terms of income and, you know, race and income. So you can get that piece at least. Well, I mean, neither is the census, but I mean, we have to deal with what we've got. But you could at least get that.
And I do want to add too that I would like to invite like Ann Venetia and Anthony Fusarelli, if my name is last name right, so the head of the planning division and the head of housing division, to come and present to us on what data do they have, what could they be sharing with us when it comes to site plans, when it comes to other, you know, projects and policies coming before the commission. They haven't been ready to do that yet, but that is something that sort of the culmination of the offline conversations that I've been having with them. I want them to also at some point come publicly before the commission this year and talk about that. And I think that's a good time to ask those questions. I mean, we could potentially do like a separate resolution or something asking for these things. I would prefer to have that discussion with them first and then, you know, see what they have, see what they think, because they want to work with us on this. I think a lot of it is probably just a question of timing that like, I can do that for you. It's just gonna be a year because I have to do these other things first and, you know, here's our priority list. So I think continuing that conversation offline, I think this helps move us forward. And then having them come maybe in the fall to present on like, here's the data we currently have access to that we could be sharing with you. Here's what that could look like, and then sort of shaping that from there.
That sounds really good. I know I'm starting to sound a bit like a data evangelist on all this stuff, but I think that it's a good framework. I really think it'll make the decision-making tighter, and it'll help the Housing Commission really drill down into some important recommendations with data backing it up. I do foresee, however, that when we start using this, that we may not have answers for some of these questions, and the response, will be, this needs to be looked into, or we need to develop the data on this. So I think particularly at the start, that might be where we are with some of this. But I look forward to at least having the framework to drive those questions. And I do think it's not only for the partnership between us and the staff resources here within the county's structure, but again, it's also working with the developers and the other stakeholders. For example, when we're talking about the LGBTQ, questioning, we should, they can be engaged to see, hey, we've got this development. Is there anything going on? Are you hearing? Does anyone in your community have something to offer about this, or that we should be asking? It might not be very specific at first, but I think over time it would develop.
Elizabeth?
Yeah, so I agree with this being like a really good framework to work off of, I think. And please correct me if I'm wrong here, because again, my first meeting, but from what especially having these conversations with developers today, it seems like at the end of the day, there's still policy and laws that kind of restrict us, right? So we asked all those questions today, like, you asked for more affordable units, or we talked about the impacts that these developments have on communities, or underrepresented communities and stuff like that. But it's like, at the end of the day, the whole thing was like, well, we can't do that. We're still just going to give you the 500,000. So I, again, agree that it's a good framework. We have to start somewhere. But I think we need to be very smart in how we implement it, because we do have certain constraints. So it's like, how are we going to change a developer's mind? I doubt, and this is me being like cynical, but they're gonna be like, we don't care who's burdened. We're just trying to get our building up, right? I just think we need to be like very strategic in that sense, because again, they're gonna, they were like, no, sorry, seven's enough for you. Like, it's fine, just be happy with that.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of it, to Laura's point, is you're establishing or you're building a record. I mean, Mike said this too. You're establishing a record, right? Like, every time you're asking that question, and if the answer is, well, we didn't even look at the LGBTQ plus population for, this neighborhood, and so we have no data on that, that becomes a point to say like, hey, every developer that we've talked to has not looked at this, and county staff hasn't looked at it. So you go to the board and you say, why does no one care about the LGBTQ plus population when it comes to housing? Why do we have this equity resolution that says this is an important population that has unique burdens in our community, but we're not doing anything about that? And then that becomes like, well, now we have data that shows we're not doing anything about that.
Yeah.
And we know there's unaddressed needs. And we saw that in the Fair Housing Plan, that, they even talked about, here's the issues with the LGBTQ population that they're facing. There was no strategies or actions related to them. So I think that's part of what we can do by establishing this for ourselves and then having those conversations. Doris, did you have?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think this is excellent, particularly because I think it helps Arlington get ahead of the new affirmatively forwarding for housing rule and all of the requirements that it looks like for reading the proposed rule will be there. And then it also advances the whole idea of equity throughout the community. So I think that's really great. I just had a curiosity question. It also appears to me to be very similar to what they're trying to do in Fairfax in the One Fairfax policy, and I'm just curious whether you would consider it, similar to that, although I actually like the way you're putting it forward.
Doris, I actually don't know anything about the One Fairfax policy.
Oh. It's the racial equity policy.
Okay. If you could forward me any information about that, that'd be helpful to take a look at.
Yeah.
I think that was the other interesting thing when I was putting this together is that Arlington has started with race, which is great. It's very important to start, somewhere and starting with racial equity. It's very important. But I also recognized, I was like, none of these other categories in the equity resolution have gone anywhere. There's no framework for them. It's not part of the conversation. It's only focused on race, which is a huge improvement from not focusing on any of them. But I wanted to make sure that, for our commission, that it's not just race. That's a hugely important, part of the equity framework. But there's all these other categories as well that also deserve our attention. And so for me, it was also a reminder to the county of like, hey, there's a lot of other groups that also have unique challenges and burdens that we need to be thinking about in addition to the challenges that people of different races and ethnicities face.
And may I say that I actually, that's one of the things that I see and really like in it because it brings us, because you can't separate some of the intersectionality here. I mean, there are BIPOC people who are also have disabilities and have any number of intersections. So I think that's important. But one of the things I will say that I mentioned, and I will send to you, the One Fairfax policy has started to kind of permeate the community and the structure of their advisory commissions and all of that. But the interesting thing is that it did put the other ultimately marginalized groups in the policy, but it's not. Yours is more, your idea is more practically getting at the equity realm. I mean the whole picture.
Thank you for that, Doris. Yes, Laura.
In the interest of time, I'd like to move that we approve the equity framework.
I second.
Great. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And it passes unanimously. Thank you. And I will also, one of the things staff suggested was sending this to other commissions so that they can consider adopting something similar. I know the planning commission has like an equity statement, but it's not sort of guidance for themselves. So now that it's approved, I will happily send this to other commissions for their own consideration as they conduct business.
Thanks for all the work on that.
Yes,
Thank you all. Next is the 2022 Housing Commission Annual Report, which has kept getting bumped from the agenda from starting in like February. And I do want to give credit to Eric Perkey, who really had put most of this together, like 90% of it, because as he was like, oh, one of the things you need to do is put together the annual report from last year. And I started sitting down and I was like, Eric, I feel like you know this so much better than I do because you were there. So this is like the last thing he did for our commission, yes, was putting this together. So it's pretty similar to the 2021 report. Any questions or edits or changes to this document, we'll send it to the board. It's our record of what we did last year.
What building is that?
Gillian Place.
Oh, okay.
I'd like to move to approve the report.
A second.
Okay.
Beautifully.
All those, oh, yeah.
Sorry, just one thing. Do we need to start the title of all these documents, the Citizens Advisory Commission, is that going to change this to Housing Commission or leave it as is?
It would change. I'm happy to- Well, this-
Oh, 2022.
This is 2022.
Okay,
that-
all
And our name doesn't officially change, it's the board.
Gotcha,
No,
okay, okay.
So
That was all my discussion, but.
it's a good point. All those in favor of approving the plan or
Aye.
Aye.
thank you, all those opposed? Okay, hopefully Mike didn't have a comment or something during that time when I couldn't see. Great, development updates.
Okay, 1 second, I need to open it up in my email here. So I did not, oh, come on. Can't things be easy?
But it is a really nice conference room, so I guess it's a trade-off.
You know, I feel really relieved that the county has so much protection of the data.
Okay, so I was unable to send these out before, and I'm sorry about that. There was only a handful, a few minor updates to projects, that were sent out the month prior. One of the issues I was having was actually the meetings roster, and I know that's something Kellen wants to go over tonight. But the only big update, and it is good news, Park Arlington closed on its financing last week. So yes, that is closed officially. So that's the one substantive update. Other than that, there are a few June items here. The continuum of care, which I know.
That one.
Yeah.
Great.
What is it?
So the continuum of care is basically our homelessness services within the county. So prevention, providing services while people are homeless, and then helping them transition out of homelessness. And so continuum of care is a committee made up of the county and like nonprofit representatives who discuss what that should look like, and they, help advise on what to do. So we needed a representative to, it's not just that meeting. Ideally, that would be for all of their meetings. If that, but if you can only commit to one, that's okay.
I'll start with that one and let me look at the schedule.
That works. Yeah, because I think that's like we've typically, similar to SITSAC, we've had someone who's from the housing commission just sat on that. But if someone is interested too in attending those, like I think we can send more than one person from the housing commission.
What is that tag?
Or that.
Are they always during, that one's at 9 AM on a business day?
I think they're always during the day. Because they're all like staff of either nonprofits or counties, so they always.
Okay.
It is.
Virtual option. Oh, they'll actually have a standing.
I think there is there was a virtual option for that, correct? Mike is also interested in the continuum of care. Can we list him as an alternate for that? And so like, we can send the information to both Mike and Art.
Okay.
You need to fill the rest.
Yes, ideally.
What is that next?
So the next one, I pulled off, and that's why I was trying to bring up the private development page there. I think it might be a typo on the private development page. I believe it's the Courthouse West site, which is right next to not too far from here, right next to the Whole Foods down there. I think there's a PNC kind of like drive-through thing, and it's mostly surface lots.
Because the metro runs right underneath that.
Yeah, so I believe there was a special GLUP study done on that last year. And so I think it's that site. I would have to confirm though. I think there might have been a typo on the actual project page for that. So that's that one. And then Sunrise, South Glebe, Eric Berkey was on that one before, but now obviously we will.
Left us for bigger and better things.
So those are the two ones that are currently on the calendar for June.
I could do the courthouse one.
Courthouse West.
Thank you.
And I mean, I'm free to do the Sunrise South one.
Okay.
But what actually is
the SPRC, so the site plan review committee, it is, so you saw the presentations tonight. It is like usually way before they get to that point where it's still possible to influence some of the decisions they make, even around like what the building looks like. And you could say, actually, I think this park should have a water feature in it because this area of the county doesn't have enough water features. And unfortunately, by the time it gets to our commission, there's not a whole lot that can be done to change it. But that the site plan review committees, and that's representatives from like all the different relevant commissions, Parks and Rec, Transportation, Planning leads them.
Senior living, by the
Yeah,
way.
community.
Yeah, the community is like a.
Yes, there's usually
Associations.
civic association and owners. They normally don't have tenants represented, which is an
Becomes
issue. that
terrible, it's like,
been talking to the planning commission, and I think I sent out information about some steps they're gonna try to take to hopefully fix that, but we need to follow up with them on that. Yeah.
They're actually pretty cool to go to.
So I just have one quick question on the Sunrise one. I mean, I know that most of the time our presence there is because these are projects that are probably gonna have CAF units in them or something.
Not necess.
I just was wondering,
Do we get invited to only ones with caps, or I think any residential?
Any residential.
Yeah, it's any residential.
It
because
is.
I just sort of wondered, what do we have to contribute to that?
So
During the meeting?
Like during
Well,
sunrise, because it's assisted living, is that what you mean?
Well, it's assisted living and it's market assisted living, and I don't think that they get, like,
There is a
Tax.
subsidy program for assisted living.
in Arlington.
It's a statewide thing. It's auxiliary grants, and if they set aside certain units, they can, so there is something they can do to support affordable assisted living.
Oh, okay.
And I will say,
Alright.
in these meetings too, it's different than when they present to us. So if you say, guys, why don't you have 3-bedroom units? That's like, we need more of those in the county. Everyone, yeah. They actually will take that feedback and be like, okay, we're gonna work with staff and see if we can do 3-bedroom units. So they will take that sort of feedback. On the one that I was sitting on most recently, you know, we gave a lot of feedback. It was a new building right next to these market rate affordable units. And they were building this really cool, like, park-like feature that was going to be above where all the market rate, like, low-income people would be, so they could like walk and see like the nice trees and amenities up here. We're like, come on, that's got to be like at grade, or, you know, you're basically creating a tier system, and that's like not fair. So they took that feedback and they weren't able to change it completely. They were able to say, you know what, we added more trees, more shade that is going to benefit everyone, and we made aspects of this much more beneficial for everyone on the site, as not just the people who live in the new luxury building. So they will take that feedback and try to, you know, even things about design, the planning commission will go into like, I don't like how this looks, like, you know, this is ugly and you should change that. I don't like where this door is. So it's all that feedback, that it's an opportunity to provide that.
No, I was just asking
Oh,
for
for Sunrise,
specific
yeah.
to Sunrise, sorry,
Yeah, way more
not in general,
explanation
I get in
yeah.
general, but I was just curious on that. But thank you, Paul, for. Sure.
For the Public Facilities Review Committee, what is the need there?
it's a good question. So I've been asked by a planner to see if we have anyone interested in that. There's not a large affordable housing component. I think where it comes into play is something like, for example, the Clarendon sector plan discussion we had about Fire Station 4 over there. You know, that is a public facility, and if they're talking about what to do next with that, you know, down the line, you know, they think that there should be someone representing this commission at the table for that. I'm not sure how often, what % of their meetings actually discuss anything regarding affordable housing. But that invite is open to this commission for a representative. I can look into providing more details to
But that's not
everyone.
necessarily like, we're, not that this is happening, but like, hey, public facilities, we're planning on building a new library and we're gonna put it here. And that we might have an opinion about because that's near a lot of
Yeah.
affordable housing units, or it's not near a lot of affordable
Right.
housing. Or is it that sort of stuff?
Exactly.
Or they could co-locate affordable housing
Yeah.
over the library.
Yes, yes.
It could be a direct thing like co-location, or it could be more indirect as in, put this facility closer to,
Do you know, do they meet once a month or how often?
I can actually get that answer really quick.
Do we have anyone who's interested in serving as a rep on the public facilities review committee?
Do we know the dates or if that's TBD?
She's looking up to see if it's like a monthly standard meeting or if it's more ad hoc or something. I don't
So it looks like they're kind of set up in between. There's no real determination. There's not currently a new one planned. The last one was May 17th. And there's not another one on the calendar right now. They have only met 3 times this year though, so far.
Sign me up for that one. I think that might fit my schedule.
Is someone, is there like, there's like a notification on the Teams? Someone had their hand raised or something?
No, that's
Oh, that's all right. Okay.
I've done PFRCs before for schools on projects that were ran, so a little familiar with it.
Okay.
Okay. Any updates from people who have gone to the SBRCs? I know I have some.
I know for me, really quickly, the Wells Fargo is done. It's pretty interesting. I think it was in the news, obviously, where they got rid of, in those meetings, the drive-through. I was a proponent of, I know it's, housing, but I was like, that is a ridiculous idea. So I am personally glad they got rid of it. But, yeah, so it was really basic. I tried to just, say as much as I can, but we know the location of the building. There was a lot more other voices in the room. So yeah, so that one's done. Hopefully, it sounds like a good project. It's nice that the developers really took what people were saying to heart to try to, and they were limited also due to the fact of the location of the Verizon building, all that stuff. But that's done.
The Boston Holiday Inn, I believe that's the one that Michael covered for me because my husband surprised me with concert tickets. So I definitely had a date night with my spouse. And Michael stepped in on that one. So if he's still on the, which I was very grateful for, so.
Do you have an update?
Yeah, it has an update.
Yeah, just on that one, I actually asked the developer about, I think at our last meeting, we asked to have the developers come prepared to tell us when the last time was that they put on-site units. So I actually asked the developer and they couldn't answer. We gave them a couple minutes to look. And so we did ask them to come, prepared to the housing to be able to speak about, when the last time was that they put on-site units. And then the representative from the planning commission kind of jumped in and said, we want the same thing from planning. Surprisingly, maybe not so surprisingly, but the Civic Association rep was demanding more affordable housing. And they really treated the person like really poorly. He had a lot of concerns about, I guess there's like a trail that leads to a nearby school or community center, and the construction is going to block the trail. I guess a lot of the kids use that trail to stay off of must be like Fairfax Drive. And so there were some concerns about that, but the developer was not able to answer it. And then just lastly, just off the top of my head, there were some concerns about traffic coming off of 66. This is at the Holiday Inn in that area. And the residents would need to make like an immediate right into the parking lot. And there was some concern that, coming off of 66 at, 50, 60 miles an hour, it's going to cause some accidents because the turn space is really narrow. And there's also only one street to come back out. So cars making a right onto Fairfax and making a right off Fairfax into the community it's a pretty tight space. So those are the notes that I have off the top of my head.
Thank you, Mike. So I attended the second SPRC for, I think it's 2020 Fairfax Drive. And I had already shared with you all through email some of the previous outcomes of that, which was a big concern I had, that there were no tenants represented at the meeting. And the existing units, as I said, they're historical. That was the site that I just used the example from. They're now historic, but they're very, very cheap units. I lived there for 10 years. They're like ridiculously cheap for being in courthouse, like $2.
Is this Wakefield Manor?
Yes, Wakefield Manor. And what they're doing is to preserve those as historic, market rate affordable. They're taking the parking lot that most of the residents use and they're building a high rise on it, which I think is a great idea. The problem is all those residents are losing a good chunk of their parking. For construction, they're gonna lose all their parking for like 2 years. And then when the site is up, they're getting 30 units in a garage. They currently have I think it's like 45, and they're also losing street parking, which the parking is completely utilized every day. So my concern that I brought up during this latest meeting was, you're displacing residents by doing this. Like, there are gonna be residents who say, I have a car, I will have nowhere to park my car, how can I continue living here? And I asked staff, do we have a policy that says when we displace tenants through something like this, that there's some sort of assistance or, mitigation that we do? And no response. So I reached out to Matt DeFranzi afterwards, raised the issue with him, and also planning and housing staff. He just got back to me, I think today, and said that he's had a discussion with staff about it. The concerns are noted. I don't know if anything more is going to happen, but it's something that frustrated me because the response was kind of, well, Arlington is a, car-free diet community. And I was like, but you are taking away parking that people rely on who already live there. It's very different when you're building a new building and you're saying, okay, we're just not gonna provide parking. People know that going in. You're taking away something people currently have. We know many of them are low income. And we had 3 residents who were there who said, I will have to move. I have to drive to get to my job. It's not metro accessible. It's not public transit accessible. And the response was just kind of shrug. That sucks. And so, my point to the county was we should have some sort of policy in place that says when you're impacted like this, whether it's moving assistance or something that recognizes we have displaced you, the county board has approved the project that is forcing you to leave. So, yeah, I raised the concern and, I'll keep at it, but I don't know if anything immediately is going to change as a result of that. But that was one of the major concerns that I had.
It was missing middle, it wasn't shrug. They all of a sudden cared that.
That's Arlington County for you.
Anything else on developer updates or development updates?
Nope.
Okay, subcommittee reports, homeownership subcommittee.
So we had a meeting on May 11th, and we talked, a big part of it actually was the equity discussion that we talked about. That was actually probably the most of the meeting, but we also got a summary of their, they've been doing these homeownership study roundtables. So we got a summary of how those have gone, and now they're going to start the local community engagement, and the dates have changed, so I don't know the exact dates, but I have June 6th, but don't write that down. Maybe you know better.
It's, I believe, let's see, it's July.
Oh, it's been moved.
Yeah, I can grab it real quick. Let me clarify with Caitlin before I tell you the wrong thing.
I'm meeting with her on Monday, so I'll know
Okay.
on Monday what the dates are. So, and we're gonna start off with the virtual community engagement and then do also in person.
Great. Mike, did you have anything you want to add?
Nope.
Okay. And if you guys could just share the dates for that once you have them with the full commission. Also, I know people were at the last meeting, the joint, well, I guess it was technically the TLC's meeting and not ours, which was weird. They talked about the tenant forum, the county sponsoring, that's on Saturday. And, which is great. And I hope that goes well. Hopefully some people can make it. I think I have a conflict for that, but I think that was it. Yes, Laura.
Is it true the county today filed its response on the missing middle lawsuit?
Alex.
I did read that in Earl now. I do not know anything more.
What did you say, Laura? I'm sorry.
About the missing middle lawsuit.
Yeah,
County did file a response?
the response, yeah. Follow that with great interest.
Yeah, we will see what happens there. I think that's all I have. So, well, that anyone has. Thank you all. Appreciate
Thank you.
it tonight. It was a good meeting. Oh, Mike, what's up?
Yeah, I was just gonna say quickly, I had a conversation with Takis today. He's in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I guess everyone is super fascinated about missing middle, and he was getting hundreds of questions about how Arlington got it across the finish line.
All right.
I wanted to know. Oh, and the next
I live
meeting
in
is.
Charlotte, and there were the best examples of missing middle right on that street.
I might not be.
We do.
Stuck in the middle of